Hey everyone, and welcome to today's episode. Before we jump in, I wanted to give all of you an update on our Patreon. We're adding a lot of new options there, so just want to give you the rundown. So before I jump into that, wanted to let you know that we try to offer as many free things as possible, including this podcast. We have a free community Zoom happening every Tuesday at 6 p.m. Central. It's a time for us to connect with listeners, for you to connect with us, to connect with other listeners. And there's always really great insights that come out of these conversations. Always feel really phenomenal leaving them. Just good to connect with people. And as far as the tiers go, tier 1, it's just $3. From there, there's an additional Zoom call that happens just after the 6 p.m. Central, so at 7 p.m. Central. And typically more intimate, have one or two people join these calls. And for Patreon tier 2 at $10 if you want to support us, on top of everything I've mentioned, you have an additional Zoom call on Fridays at 12 p.m. Central. And on top of that, you'll also get a private call with Sophie or I once a month, 30 minutes just to chat, see what's up. And we just like to connect with everyone and we can chat about whatever it is you want. And lastly, if you really want to support us and really want to be involved, Patreon tier 3, $25, everything I've mentioned. Additionally, you will also get 10% off future events, which we are planning different courses. We are planning different retreats. So stay tuned for that. But we would love to see you there. Everything we offer, we do put our full hearts into. So if you do want to support us, check out our Patreon and enjoy today's episode. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Life Unpotted. I am so excited to be here today. I think we said that last week, but last week was so hard. Coming back into podcasting, it was like nails on a chalkboard. It was so hard. I'm not even going to lie to you about that. Like, lost all awareness, was in the depths of the throes. Like, it was just so intense. And the reality is that happens sometimes. And that's okay. You always can come back from that. And we have, and we are on a roll right now. We're so excited to podcast. I'm sure you can feel the difference in last week's podcast. We were trying to just get through it, convince ourselves that everything was fine, but sometimes it's just how it is, and that's okay. So I don't even know where to begin because there's so much ground we're going to cover today. So buckle up. We're going to talk a lot. We're going to talk fast. The cadence is going to be quick. So I think the first thing I want to jump into is when we have this level of suffering, it's always in regard to us taking ourselves and our lives way too serious. It's this fear that we are going to be perceived a certain way, that we're going to be stuck a certain way, that we're thinking of our pasts in a locked in, serious way, and we're putting too much weight to it. And the reality is there is a freedom on the other side when we say it's not that serious. But the further down we are in the suffering, it is much more easy to take things really serious and be really serious about our suffering and tell you about it and tell you why it is that way and tell you why it is always going to be that way. And as long as we are doing that, we are missing the point of actually living. And I wanted to just read a really quick excerpt from probably my favorite book of all time by Ellen Watts, Become What You Are. This book is like an insane mind just awakening. Like there is just so much in here that puts words to feelings and thoughts that I had never comprehended. So what I want to talk about is this idea of perpetuating our misery, our suffering. But something that he says here that I was reading this morning, and Sophie had annotated different things, which was really fun to see the things that you had highlighted because these are some really good points. And one of the things you highlighted was, it is simply the expression of the universal discovery that a man does not really begin to be alive until he has lost himself, until he has released the anxious grasp which he normally holds upon his life, his property, his reputation, and position. It is the irreducible truth in the monkish idea of holy poverty, of the way of life to which there are no strings attached, in which, because all of it is lost, There is nothing to lose, in which there is an exhilaration of a kind of freedom, which is poetically likened to the birds in the winds or the clouds drifting in the boundless sky. It is the life which St. Paul describes as poor, but making many rich, as having nothing but possessing all things.
Wow, what a incredible introduction. I would agree. It's been a crazy week. Last week, I was so anxious. I was so caught up in my head. I couldn't see past it. Honestly, I was going through it. And I think the reminder I just want to make, as always, when we're going through the shit, when we don't feel good or we're caught up in our head or we're feeling sad, we have two choices, right? We can let the emotion take its course. And I think Alan Watts actually has a really beautiful, in that book, Daisy, he talks about rarely do we allow our emotions to really take their course. We cut it too soon. We cut the emotion too soon before we can really get the insight. And what I learned from last week was that it took me until Saturday, and I think I started feeling shitty like 2 weeks before then, where I got to the point where I was like, okay, I feel sad. Can I just accept this? Can I just accept that this is how I'm feeling? And then bam, I ended up crying, and it was like, oof, that weight went away. Oh, the fear I was having about money. Oh, the fear I was having about not feeling good enough. I kept comparing myself to people on social media. And a really big takeaway I've had from all of this is that we need to remember that our thoughts do not reflect reality, especially when we're going through really tough emotions, especially when everything's rising to the surface. It is especially in these moments where the way in which we perceive the world, the way in which we view the world is going to be tainted by these emotions. We're going to think that the thoughts that are coming up are true. So to anybody who's going through any of this, it is pausing and remembering that you don't have to believe your thoughts. You can find and cultivate a space to separate yourself from the thoughts and to remember that they're just thoughts.
And on that note, I have another great quote from this book that really is in line with why it is okay to acknowledge our feelings and why it is necessary to accept them and go into them. And it is the exact reason of you doing that as to why you sit here today with the enthusiasm, the insight, and the inspiration that you have. Here's the quote. But ordinarily, we do not discover the wisdom of our feelings because we do not let them complete their work. We try to suppress them or discharge them in premature action, not realizing that they are a process of creation which, like birth, begins as a pain and turns into a child. So this in particular is something, our quick fix, our quick jump into wanting to alleviate pain. And there is a beauty, we learn this in nature, that we cannot resist the change that arises. The same thing with like when we were in Joshua Tree and we saw that, the desert climate, it's an extreme climate. It's very hard to survive in. The only way you can survive is through non-resistance and to ebb and flow with the amount of water that comes in and goes out. And it's to adapt. And I've never thought about adaptability in terms of adapting to our state of emotions and feelings and allowing them to come up and to experience them and to go into them. And that is a big myth. I feel like we're taught to in grind culture when you're building something. It's that you always are just moving forward. Drink the coffee, get it done. Doesn't matter what your internal state is. It matters what your output is. And I think what we're discovering here is that your internal state is directly connected to what you create. And when you make friends with that internal state and you are able to nurture it in this experience, you're able to go into the feelings and give them the nurturing and the love they need, you're going to create without actually lifting a finger because you're going to have the insights. You always come back to this extreme insightful state after going through these emotional, distressing times. But it's the self-awareness that allows you to go through these emotional, distressing times and We were talking with our friend last night, and one of the things that was really interesting was that we are only judging someone else's vulnerability if we are not allowing ourselves to feel. We are judging someone else's vulnerability if we aren't allowing ourselves to feel, because we all want to be that. We all want to feel. We all want to be connected. But the reality is we can only do that when we are being kind to ourselves and not judging ourselves. And there's one other thing I wanted to say here. Just bringing it back to this idea of once we lose everything, we have everything. Once we lose everything, we have access to everything. It's not until we've lost it all that we actually begin to live. And I love how Ellen Watts talks about how easy it is to get caught up in this idea of your lifestyle, of that your lifestyle is you. That new Mercedes you got, that's you. Someone hitting it and scratching it, the anger, the plummet to your confidence and your ego and the anger that comes with that, that's also your lifestyle. So just as much as things make you happy, they also make you miserable, because ultimately that is not life. That is not the ultimate beauty, like he said, of the birds singing, the sun rising. That's not what that is. That is a synthesized small version. Of course, those are things that we enjoy. We enjoy the niceties of life, a nice tea party, whatever it is, a nice vibe. But we have to recognize at the same time that is not what life is about, because life is much deeper. And it is hard sometimes, until we've lost everything, for us to recognize there's more to life than our heated seats and our heated steering wheel on a cold day. Because once we have lost everything, we do feel free. And I've experienced this from living on savings. I've experienced this I had this realization a few months back that, oh, my savings is pretty much gone. And I had a freak out. And then I was like, I feel freer than I've ever felt. And I want to leave this on one more quote on that regard. Presidents of great corporations retreating to lonely fishing shacks in the high Sierra. The insurance clerk walking alone on the interminable ocean sands, wondering if he would have the courage to be a beachcomber. Or the moral idealist reproaching himself because he does not have quite the strength to abandon a comfortable salary and plunge into the slums. Like Peter Morin and Dorothy Day, or the great examples of St. Francis and St. Vincent de Paul. But most of us know that we will not and probably cannot do it, that we shall continue to cling to our habitual ways of life with all the helplessness of addicts to destroying a passion. And to me, that symbolizes this journey that we're on. And there is a reason to why losing everything helps you see the reality of what you've been missing through having everything, because you take your lifestyle as fact. And oftentimes you become chained to the idea of yourself. You become cemented and you worship the idea of yourself. And the last 2 weeks being in the depths and the despairs of like reliving what I used to experience without the awareness is that it's a very scary place to be. But realizing coming out of it, I had no escape from the idea of who I was. And death is the ultimate thing of us realizing we have no control of it. And death can help us realize that since we will no longer be in these bodies at some point, that there must be something greater than us. There must be a greater collective than just me, Daisy Ford, me as a human being. It helps us be dechained from this idea of who we are, to think of what is this greater collective? What is this greater experience that we're all having? It helps you stop being so obsessed with the idea of who you are, because that is what brings all of the suffering and the aches and the pains and the exhaustion. It's allowing ourselves to detach from who we are and to just experience life in this moment. And I'm excited to do that in this conversation. And, you know, if you are going through a lot right now emotionally, if you're feeling low, go into that feeling. Allow yourself to feel it, honor it, because you will come out of it if you do that. And you will have insights. You will. You don't have to take these things serious in a way where you have to restamp them on your forehead every day when you wake up. You can wash it clean, and it's painful to do that because we let go of certainty, and that's always uncomfortable. But on the other side, there's always this level of comfort. On the other side, there's always this level of freedom and excitement and rebirth in a lot of ways. So don't judge yourself with where you're at. Where you're at is always in the cycle of life. And just know that you can have the awareness to come out of it. I just talked for a very long time.
That's because you're processing, right? That's because you did allow yourself. Like, I remember, Daisy, last week, I didn't even recognize you as you were going through what you're going through. Like, you weren't there. It felt like you were gone. And that's what we've referred to as, and again, we're not psychologists, we're not therapists, but it felt like you were disassociating from reality, the ultimate escape of resistance. And it's so interesting that we don't realize how much we're resisting every single moment. And I saw myself going through that all last week, where I'd wake up, I'd feel so intense, I'd feel so anxious. Okay, I have to check my calendar, I have to do this. I start getting into this very anxious state of something's wrong. I just can't relax. I just can't feel relieved. And then my mind starts going, oh, okay, let me start worrying about the podcast. Let me start worrying about, I'm not making enough money right now. Let me start worrying and worrying and worrying. And it takes me over 7 days to realize, oh, there was just some emotion coming up that I had to feel. There was just sadness masking itself through the lens of fear. And maybe now my realization is that next time I start going through this, and maybe this is what happens, the more times we go through stuff and we have the awareness to recognize that, oh, we didn't just, in a way, yeah, we went through these emotions coming up, but did we? Or did we also go through playing the victim? Or did we also go through taking it too seriously? Or did we also go through believing the story? And this is where we forget, but this is where we also can remember that we are the ones creating our life. We are creating our reality. We are believing the story. We are playing the character. We are playing the role. And we can decide right now that we don't want to keep playing it. That we don't want to be tied to the material items, that we don't want to feel so frustrated when our car gets dirty or when we don't have the right thing to eat for dinner. We don't want to be controlled by everything in life. We want to feel at peace and a sense of wholeness. And what I realized is that feeling is not a state that comes when we're thinking about who we are and our name and where we're from. That's a feeling we get when we let go of our past.
I can confidently say that I'm convinced from my experience in showing how deeply I was in it in such a short period of days ago, where you had to almost literally shake me and look at me and say, what is going on? Because when you can shift so quickly out of something, the only reason, and this is from my experience, and I was at points in my life in very, 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 very low spots, you're only perpetuating. I perpetuated it by playing the victim because that was comfortable. But it brought such extreme suffering, numbing, hopelessness. But what I'm confident in, and what I'm convinced for myself, that the only cure, it is to remember. The only cure to bring you out of that dark spot is to let go of the idea of yourself. And that is so hard to do. And when I say let go of the idea of yourself, I mean just not give so much weight to what you're experiencing in your thoughts, to question, maybe, am I being a little bit dramatic? And that's not to undermine like what you're experiencing or what you're going through, but it's asking, what role am I playing in this? What role am I playing in perpetuating my own suffering? And it's the hardest question you can ever ask and answer.
And the key ingredient here that broke your suffering, Daisy, was you let me see you. Like, this is a huge component. How it felt like, and you could maybe expand on this a little more. I think it'd be really helpful, because I think what you went through is probably what a lot of people go through, of being scared to be seen in the darkness, being scared to let people see your pain. And I remember being like, Daisy, like, it's me. Like, you don't have to be so scared to show that. And I think that so much of that pain that we experience can be freed when we open ourselves up, whether that is through self-expression, whether that is through crying or writing or singing or letting our family or our partner or our friends see that we're hurting.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think that when we feel hurt or when we feel wounded, those are the times we want to close. Those are the times that we want no one to see us. And I think that one thing is exactly what helps us stay suffering and scared, because we need people, especially in our darkest times. And we have this tendency to close down when we feel our worst. But in reality, exactly what we need is to share with others. And that feels unfathomable. But that is questioning, where am I perpetuating my own suffering? How am I playing in that role? And I did that. So I'm saying that I perpetuated it because I took it very serious. Because it's almost like we're afraid to come out of it, maybe subconsciously, because we know if we connect with others, we will come out of it. And
I want to understand, and maybe it's helpful to ask you, like, what is the fear there? Does someone else seeing you make you confront what you think is the truth that you've avoided? Like, why are we so scared to be seen? Why do we close ourselves off so much?
It's a really, really, really good question. I don't know if it's like a learned pattern. I think there's probably something deeper to it. I think maybe that's the last result of, that's like the last methodology of protecting ourselves.
Well, in your experience, like, why do you think that was how you showed up?
It's a really good question. It's almost like that was a strong neural pathway that was just created in my brain, that to exile myself and to separate myself, because in a way that made me feel like it's not me that's the problem, it's everyone else. They're all hurting me, because it was a distraction from actually working through the pain. Because when you're young, you can't do that. You can't work through the pain when you're a child. So going back through that as an adult and having that experience as an adult, it's easy to revert back to your childhood ways when you don't have that awareness, or you don't have someone in your life who can help you bring awareness to that. So that's the best answer I have. I think it's that. And I think I'm also becoming aware that this is so not unique to me. This is so not unique to me at all. Because I think that the more we think it is unique to ourselves and unique to us, the more that we just create this victim mindset. And this is not unique to me. Everyone's experienced this at some level, I'm sure. Maybe I've experienced it in a deeper component, but like I'm sure so many people have as well. And I think that's something I'm really becoming aware of, is that this is not unique to me. Like, because that is exactly what victim mindset does, is it makes you think it's just me, it's no one else. But the more we're able to recognize that this is just part of the human experience, that's all it is. This really has nothing to do with Daisy. This is an experience that Daisy had. And at some point, I will no longer experience this the way that I have. That's an important thing to know, because it's so easy to make it part of our personality and to keep it alive by telling people about it, right? And that's where I'm becoming aware of right now, is that we almost feel good being like, yeah, this is me. This is what happened. And that's a slippery slope for that to be the case. Because I think what I realized from this is I always thought I was introverted, or I just needed more space alone. I needed more quiet time. And I think what I recognized was that it was just a learned pattern. That is not true. That's not who I am. That's just me wanting to close more and being afraid to open around people because it was too painful or too scary. It's like that's all that was, because I want to connect with people. I want to be open. And the only thing that got in between me and that was this idea that I needed this time alone, that I was introverted, that I liked more slow-paced, quiet things. And it's like, I'm not subscribing to that anymore. I'm pushing beyond that. Just because I feel like I've been sad or quiet or alone most of my life, so what? That was an experience that I played a role in perpetuating. And I'm no longer willing to play a role in that perpetuation like I have.
Well, it's kind of like this realization I had recently that like I have avoided exercising. I have defined myself ever since COVID happened, and going from I used to work out like pretty intensely when I was like 25, and I had to go to these like intense spin classes at 6 a.m. before work. Like life was just so much different before working remote and everything. And I think after COVID hit, or during COVID, I started to develop this fear of, I hurt my hip during hot yoga once, and I started just feeling like, oh, I'm not someone who can work out intensely anymore, or rather, I'm not someone who wants to work out. I started developing this idea that I'm not somebody who can do X, Y, Z. And not only exercise, but zoom out. Like, this becomes our whole freaking reality. I'm not somebody who can make money on my own. I'm not someone who can start a podcast. I'm not someone who can leave my job. I'm not someone who can move to a new city. The list goes on and on and on and on to thinking, I'm not someone who can actually have a life that I enjoy, because life is hard, because life is miserable. And it's just like, in the same way, you start playing that victim mindset of, I'm an introvert and I can never socialize. And you used to say to me, like, I just can't have these intense conversations in the way that you talk. And it's just like, can. It's just not thinking so much about it and not limiting yourself. And I think to whoever is listening to this, bring to mind something in your life that you tell yourself you can't do. Bring to mind the limitation that you tell yourself that you can't do. Because I'm seeing this now with, I'm working out again. We went roller skating the other night, and I hadn't roller skated in like years. Seeing that I can do fun things. Seeing that I don't have to live this very narrowed, boring life where I perceive life to be boring. And it's like, no. Life's not boring. Like, you're really going to say that, like, we're sitting on this planet and life is boring? No, you're just scared. You're just scared of facing the discomfort, of facing the pain. And yeah, of course, I have sympathy to that. I have empathy to that. But I need to be a little tough, because it gets to a point where it's like someone has to say, hey, you're doing this to yourself. Like, Daisy called out my bullshit about exercising. I kept coming up with excuses. I'm like, I don't know, like, maybe this is like my autoimmune thing I had growing up. And she's like, no, you literally haven't worked out in a month. Like, our life, our reality, like, we are creating it.
Or 3 years.
Or 3 years, right? It's like, we get, like, it's like, why? It's like, holy shit. Like, we are the ones. It's just us.
We convince ourselves to make our reality so small. We limit ourselves. We are limitless, but we choose to create these limitations because oftentimes, in order to see that we are limitless, going back to Alan Watts, it's like childbirth. We have to let the pain turn into a child. childbirthing is probably one of the most painful things we can experience. And what comes from it? Human life. So I think that's just something to keep in mind of when you are feeling like absolute shit. It's like, have that awareness of what role am I playing? Maybe I should get some physical activity. Maybe I should go and socialize. Maybe I should go to a group setting and find people to be with. Maybe I should pull myself up out of this bullshit cave I've created, you know? And it's oftentimes easy to think that things just are the way they are. And we give up control of our lives. We give up power to our lives, and we just fall victim to the things that happen to us. So when we empower ourselves by questioning those narratives and by pushing ourselves out of our comfort zones, that is where we begin to learn. And that is where we begin to create this muscle of having awareness, of realizing we're always going to have periods where we feel like shit. The extent of the time period is really up to us. We could spend the rest of our lives in that if we so choose, by saying we're the victim, I can't take accountability. You know, it's just how it is. This is what happened to me. I have this like fear of like going to the doctor. I have this, I have that. And we can just spend our entire lives banging our head on the wall. Or we can say, wait a minute, I've been here before. How am I participating? How am I opening the door to walk through into the suffering? And we can take accountability. Like, that's what it is. And I'm not here to undermine how fucking hard it is to take accountability, because 3-4 days ago, I was sitting in this room where we're podcasting, and Sophia like had to like shake my head basically and say, why are you so closed? And, you know, we're so lucky to have people in our lives who won't put up with our bullshit, won't put up with ourselves allowing ourselves to sit in our own suffering. Because at the end of the day, there is always something that we are doing. There's always something that we're doing to perpetuate our suffering. Meaning the empowering component there is there is always something we can do to even just a little bit alleviate our suffering and watch it alleviate bit by bit over the next days. But I think there is a fear in taking control and taking over an accountability, because it's scary. It's really scary. But I promise it's worth it. It is worth it, because life can feel so expansive when we allow ourselves to say, I am the one who is perpetuating this. And that means there is a way out.
I think a good way to close out this episode, maybe, Daisy, you can let us know what, reflecting on last week and reflecting on this experience of, you know, going through basically an emotion or the state that you used to live in, and now having the awareness where you were able to come out of that. And as we're on this journey of waking up and deepening our awareness, we do look at these patterns as they arise, and we go, oh, I spent my whole life in that. And that's where the cycle breaks. What is your difference now in how you feel today versus how you felt last week? And did you feel like there was a way out as you were going through it?
I'll read another quote from this book because it's just spot on. The fragility and frailty of our human bodies within the merciless and marvelous torrent of life evokes every emotion of this agonizingly sensitive organism. Love, anger, sadness, terror, and the fear of terror. And our attempts to stand above these emotions and control them, are the emotions themselves at play. Since love is also to be in love with love, and sadness is to be sorry that one is sad. Our unwillingness to feel is the very measure of our ability to feel. For the more sensitive the instrument, the greater its capacity for pain, and so for the reluctance to be hurt. So I think, to summarize there, in our desperate attempt to not feel, we will intellectualize our feelings, and we will be afraid of fear, or we'll be upset that we're sad. We'll be sad that we're sad. And we get so stuck in this emotion that we live within the emotion, and we think that we are in that emotion, and we think there is no way out of that emotion. And that's the exact reason why we are not feeling. is because we are avoiding feeling by thinking about the emotion. And that's where life gets really scary, of where we can feel like, oh, I can't feel anything anymore because I'm numb. And why do you think that's the case? Because you're thinking about how disappointed you are to be sad. And this is exactly what brought me into this, was that I was so upset that I was sick a month ago. I was so upset. I resisted it so much that I wasn't even feeling through it. I was thinking about the state, and I got stuck in the state of the mentality around being sick because I wasn't feeling through it. When we don't feel things, we get stuck in our idea of being afraid of feeling them. And even though we may not be feeling these things anymore, our mindset is so still in it because we've never even felt it. Because we get into like, it's almost like, let me paint a picture. It's like going to detention or you're in a room of chalkboards and it's saying, I am sad, I am sad, I am sad. You don't feel anything, but you feel the clouds in the gray sky above you because you're like, oh shit, like I'm in this room and now I'm sad. I hate being in this room. It's the resistance. It's all of that. It's like you're not even feeling anymore. You're told that you are in this room and that this is the sad room, and you're going to keep telling yourself that you're sad. So even if Elvis Presley, your biggest idol, randomly comes back from the dead, you're still going to feel sad because you've conditioned your brain to say, I'm sad. And you're thinking about how you're sad instead of actually feeling it, because our emotional states change constantly. The only thing that keeps us stuck in emotional states longer than how they need to be is when we assign a thought to how our lives need to be. And that's like the ping pong in our brains. That's what was going on with me, was that I was just so stuck in this, going back and forth, that I was no longer feeling. And that is the difference. To answer your question, now I'm at a place where I'm not stuck in my mind. I feel like I'm just experiencing life. I don't feel like I'm me, or I don't feel like anything. I feel like there's a natural flow that is happening, a gravitational pull forward and push backwards.
You're not thinking about yourself.
Experiencing. Exactly.
You're not thinking.
I'm not thinking about myself. I'm just experiencing life. And I am so grateful to be able to have awareness, to live like this. And it's not unique to me. Every single person can do this.
Yeah, awareness is not something you have. Awareness is something you tap into and recognize that you are the awareness.
Well,
you are that.
It's all of our rights to be able to tap into that.
Well, it's what we are. You're not anything more than the awareness of yourself.
Well, if we didn't have the human brain, we would all be in that state at all times, with the flow of the way that when it gets cold, the squirrels bury nuts. Like, it's just things that just happen, and it's our brain that gets in the way. But so we have to learn to train our brain. And
I'm not sure where Elvis Presley came into that analogy, but I get what you're saying.
It's like, even if your biggest dream comes true,
I get that.
You're going to feel like, oh, like, like when they're describing depression, it's like the things that used to make you happy no longer make you happy. Like, that's how I was feeling the past week or two. And it's because I was so caught up in the idea of being sad, and I was mad that I was sad that I was sad, and instead of just feeling the emotion. That's it. And when you isolate yourself, good luck feeling. Good luck, because we need human touch. We need people to see us and say, I see you, and it's okay that you're sad. I'm here for you. That's what breaks it. When you're able to open to just one single person, even your dog, even your cat.
But the reality of it is, I do want to counter that. It's like, it's not what you're doing always is you're opening to yourself. You're not opening to other people. There are no other people.
Well, when I say that, I mean like
isolation. If you're going to process something in your room and crying, the difference there is you're going to go into your room. Either you're going to your room angry and you're pissed off and you're going to scroll on TikTok, or you're going into your room and letting yourself see yourself. The only difference that you had when you opened up to me was you opened up to you.
I know. I see your point.
There are no other people.
Your point is valid. I mean that in a sense of sometimes it is more helpful to have someone there saying like, open to me. Sometimes it's more helpful to do that.
Right, but for somebody who doesn't, for someone who lives alone and doesn't have that, you can still reach that state by recognizing that you have to be the person to yourself who says, hey, like I say to myself sometimes, like, hey, Sophie, like, it's okay. It's okay. I see you. It's okay. Like, ultimately, that's the goal, too, is for us to open to ourselves without needing somebody else, without you needing me to come in and shake you, for you to shake yourself.
You're right. You're fully right.
And to go, you don't need anybody to do that.
Yeah.
It helps. But ultimately, what we're doing is that we are opening ourselves.
Right.
That's what we're always doing, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're right.
It's not about being right. It's about
no, but like that point that you brought up, like it's factual.
It's funny. It's like you're right. It's like it's never even what I'm trying to do.
I agree with what you're saying.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I like that better.
It's been a good conversation. I think that life should feel exciting for everyone at points in your life. Like life is not meant to be dull. We go through seasons of dullness, but they're never permanent. Nothing is permanent in this life. There's always cycles to life. And as long as we are tapped into feeling them, everything always goes back to feeling. Because that quote, I'm still thinking about it. The whole reason we get trapped into feeling sad is because we're thinking about how we were feeling sad, and we create this idea of us as sad, but we're not even feeling it. The reason we're thinking about it is because we never actually felt it. So it's almost like feeling things as soon as they come up and having awareness to do that. It's a powerful tool. It's a powerful way to experience life that allows you to stay open, that allows you to experience life and to not think about yourself. And it is a muscle. And, us taking 2 weeks off, really, we faltered a lot, and we saw how quickly we could falter. So we are all capable of falling off. But that's exactly what life's about. It is about losing everything, because once we lose everything, we're able to be found. We're able to find ourselves again. And life is almost a continuation of us losing ourselves and finding ourselves again. I mean, I think that's beautiful. And I think a lot of art, that's the center of it. I mean, he opened this book by saying the central message in so many teachings around the world is that exact quote of it's not until we are lost that we can be found. Like that summarizes like the human experience. And it's something that day in and day out, it happens. Whether I work in corporate finance or whether I'm an artist who paints the beautiful trees in the wind, it's like we as human beings experience this. It's not the way we live our lives does not shelter us from the truths of the human experience. We all experience these things, and it might manifest and look differently, but we're all going through this unknown experience in space. And that's the beauty, right? Like that's the realness of when we're able to lose everything, we're able to find that truth. And that truth is where so much excitement lies, to feel connected, to feel like alive again. I love the song First Day of My Life by, I forget that band. Of My Life. I think it's about like, it's a love song. I would always play that song when I felt like I found myself again. After going through a period of discomfort, going through a period of feeling low. And there would be days I'd wake up and I would just feel so excited again, because I thought that song just embodied the waking back up to feeling that excitement, that rush of being alive, for passion again. And I hope that, that's what we help bring awareness to, is that there is always a cycle of life, and we can shorten those periods of lowness by having awareness of ourselves and feeling. So this was a really good episode today. I really enjoyed everyone being here. And we have our chat tonight on Zoom. We have our community Zoom. So we would love to see you all there. We're very excited for it. And just a reminder, it's at 6 p.m. Central. That's the free call. And if you're a Patreon member for the tier 1 for $3 a month, you have access to the 7 p.m. Central call. And we had a member join last week. It was really fun. It was just like a one-on-one chat. So if you're interested in chatting with us, those are usually like smaller, intimate calls. Consider joining our Patreon for $3 a month and having access to a call that's more intimate. We'd love to see you there. We'd love connecting with listeners because we never know who the hell is listening to our podcast. So we'd love to connect with you all and hear what's going on in your life and just chat. So thank you all for being here today. We will see you on Thursday and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you everyone for being here. It's been an awesome conversation. It was fun to watch Daisy have all these insights and go through the Ellen Watts book. So we'll talk to you all on Thursday and we'll see you tonight if you're joining the Zoom. Cheers.